So what's all this bullshit with Dr. Anthony Fauci getting called to testify? Rand Paul having a little temper tantrum about it. So Fauci's diary got leaked, and apparently members of Congress, members of the Senate wanted to grill him about it. 85-year-old retired man, they're dragging him up, demanding that he answer questions. And all of the conservative internet is having an absolute meltdown over how Fauci responded.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote. Any reasonable person who has followed his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so he took the fifth, and everybody's having an absolute meltdown over it. Well, again, conservatives are having a meltdown over it, saying, oh, well, that's because he's done crimes, right? He had to plead the fifth because he must have done something bad, and therefore he needs to be investigated. Well, let's talk about how many times Donald Trump has pled the fifth, right? So I just think that when we're looking at Dr. Fauci getting dragged up by Rand Paul, first of all, yeah, okay, Rand Paul, Maha, whatever, all of these anti-vaxxers, all of these COVID deniers, they've been frothing at the mouth, ready to just right, they got their pitchforks ready. They're desperate to blame Anthony Fauci for what happened in the COVID pandemic, which is still ongoing. By the way, COVID is still a thing, still a thing. So my kid, who is studying abroad in the UK right now, texted the family group chat this morning. I was like, what the hell is going on with this Fauci testimony? She has less access to US news, but also is just busy studying political science. And she went to the Globe Theater yesterday and saw Love's Labor's Lost. I'm so jealous. She knows that I'm a big Shakespeare nut. By the way, as long as I'm on a little tangent here, I saw Hamnet on the way back from the UK on the plane, and I don't usually cry for movies. I was sobbing. Maybe it was a sleep deprivation. I was sobbing. That movie is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I get why there were Academy Awards when the acting was superb. Anyway, okay, back to what's happening with Fauci. So, B was like, what is going on with this? Why did he plead the fifth? I have not heard everything. I think it's pretty obvious what's going on. It's a giant distraction from the ways that the regime is fucking up overwhelmingly, right? From the ways that they're losing terribly. And one of the things I said in a video previously was that getting outside of the US, it's so much more apparent, all of the ways that the regime is using repressive measures within our borders. But more than that, it's also much more apparent how much Donald Trump is losing in Iran. I mean, we all know that he's losing in Iran, but the framing here is oh, it's back and forth, and the bluster from the regime has been repeatedly we've completely taken away their nuclear capabilities. We've already won. And then they're back at it again because they haven't won. But when you step outside the US, you just see how we're losing a lot. We're losing. Donald Trump has dragged us in to this horrible, ongoing, never-ending war. But we're the losers. We and Israel initiated this war, right? Our governments did. The American people did not want this. Our governments initiated this war, and we're losing real bad. So, not only are Democrats opposed to what's happening, but Republicans are not happy with this war, what it's doing to our economy, what it's doing to the cost of gas, but also we don't understand the reason for this. When autocrats try and whip up a war, They try and drum up patriotism and say it's us versus them. And of course, Islamophobia always plays into it. And of course, also Donald Trump does whatever Bibi Netanyahu wants, right? Right. This is a war that Israel wanted and the American taxpayer is paying for. And we don't understand the purpose for it. 67% of Americans want AIPAC out of our government. Americans are opposed to funding Israel overwhelmingly. And Americans in both political parties are like not hip to the fact that the ethno-state of Israel is controlling much of American politics and siphoning off billions and billions of our tax dollars to commit atrocities. And so this war in Iran, deeply unpopular. Trump needs a distraction. Republicans need a distraction because they're supporting what Trump is doing. They're right. They're declining to come in with their war powers resolution. They're declining to cut off the funding. They're continuing to let Donald Trump do this. And it is politically devastating for them. So they need a distraction. And boy, oh boy, who do MAGA Republicans love to hate? Anthony Fauci. Who do MAGA Republicans love to fixate on and come with their pitchforks for? Anthony Fauci. They're hoping to rekindle some of that animosity, some of that political volatility around the COVID pandemic. They're hoping to reconstitute some of that anger and use it as a distraction. Because they don't want Republicans to look at how bad Donald Trump and the Republican Party are doing when it comes to this needless, long slog of an incredibly expensive war in Iran. And more than that, I think, right, there's always, in permaculture, we say stacking functions. That's where you get many yields out of one action or one element in your system. Republicans are also good at stacking functions, unfortunately. This Fauci thing is meant to be a distraction from multiple failures of the regime, right? So the regime is fucking up now in so many different ways. They don't want you to see Todd Blanche getting crammed through. They don't want you to see Cornyn and Tillis standing up against that confirmation. They don't want you to see the war in Iran. They don't want you to see how bad the economy is doing. By the way, for the first time, Donald Trump has lost white, non-college educated voters. They're now majority opposed to him. And this regime isn't doing anything that benefits Americans, right? They're not able to speak to any positives. They're not doing anything good for us. And so they have to focus on hate. They have to focus on animosity. They have to have a distraction that is based on riling up the base and getting them angry, right? Getting them escalated, because they can't say like, look at the good things we're doing for you. This is why you should vote for us, or this is why you should believe in us and support us. All they have is rage bait. So that's what they're doing with Anthony Fauci, to distract from the things that the regime is doing now, and also to distract from Donald Trump's massive failures during his first term during the COVID pandemic. They want to pin it all on Anthony Fauci, but it was Donald Trump and his regime's failures. It was the origins of MAHA. And it's so frustrating for me because I lost so many friends during that period who were, the Crunchy Moms group in Portland, who were COVID deniers, vaccine deniers, who really fell down that alt-right RFK Jr. MAHA pipeline. And then ultimately a number of them ended up voting for Donald Trump because they thought RFK Jr. would take red food dye out, or I don't know. How about them forever chemicals and glyphosate now freely dumped into our water supply and in our food? Guys, how's that Make America Healthy Again working out for you? Okay, sorry, I will stop snarking. It's still a sore point for me. So, if we look back to what the CDC says about that period in time, 2020 through 2021, by the end of 2022, actually, almost 95% of Americans had contracted COVID. And I think it's important that we remind everybody that it was the failures of the Trump regime. It was the failure of good public health policy. It was all of the COVID denialism. It was the political nonsense that resulted in 1,238,563 Americans dying from COVID. Those are CDC numbers. 1.24 million people by the end of 2022 died of COVID. And so many of those are the result of folks like Rand Paul, RFK Jr., spreading vaccine denialism, spreading COVID denialism, making people afraid to practice good public health policy. The disinformation killed tons of people. Donald Trump's mangling of the COVID response killed almost 1.3 million Americans. And they want to make Fauci the scapegoat. They want you to forget that your kid's grandma and grandpa died. They want you to forget about your relatives who passed away. I want you to focus your rage on Anthony Fauci. So this is all distraction. This is all scapegoating. This is all typical theater because the Republicans don't do anything beneficial. They have to rely on rage bait.